The eternal conflict. The stars themselves had grown weary of the war. For 8,000 years, the Viridian Collective and the Araxian Dominion had torn the galaxy apart in their relentless conflict. What began as a territorial dispute over a single resource-rich system had evolved into an existential struggle that consumed hundreds of worlds and trillions of lives. The Viridians, with their hive-mind consciousness and bioorganic technology, had expanded across the galactic north with ruthless efficiency. Their ships were living entities, grown rather than built, pulsing with strange energies that defied conventional physics. Their soldiers shared a perfect unity of purpose, millions of bodies guided by a single overarching intelligence. The Araxians, in contrast, had perfected the fusion of machine and consciousness. Their crystalline bodies housed minds that operated at speeds incomprehensible to organic beings. Their starships were marvels of engineering, protected by shields that could withstand the fury of a dying sun, armed with weapons that could shatter planets. Between these titans, lesser species had been ground to dust. Entire civilizations had been extinguished, their worlds stripped for resources, their populations conscripted or exterminated. Those few who survived did so by hiding in the dark places between stars, praying the war would pass them by. It never did. Another system lost. Hierarch Zillion announced to the Viridian High Council, his voice resonating through the neural link that connected them all. The Araxians have deployed their new phase disruptors. 3 billion of our kin were severed from the collective in an instant. No one reacted with shock or grief. Such losses had become routine, expected, a daily toll in a war without end. Our biophage weapons have made equivalent progress, the hierarch continued. The outposts in the Cygnus arm have been infected. Their crystalline matrices are degrading. We estimate complete system failure within 1 lunar cycle. Again, no celebration. Victory had lost its meaning when it never brought them closer to an end. Across the void, in the gleaming central nexus of the Araxian Dominion, Supreme Commander Therix processed the same data with cold precision. His crystalline form pulsed with electric blue energy as his consciousness analyzed 1,000 battle reports simultaneously. The biophage is more advanced than our models predicted, he communicated to the command matrix. Adaptation protocols have been initiated, but losses are projected at 62% of affected territories. The other commanders acknowledged without emotion. They had fought this war for so long that many had been destroyed and rebuilt dozens of times. Their memories stretched back millennia, and yet they could remember nothing but war. Our phase disruptors performed as expected, Therix continued. However, the Viridian evolutionary response will likely neutralize their effectiveness within 3 standard cycles. The endless cycle continued. For every weapon, a defense. For every strategy, a counter-strategy. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage, yet neither would consider peace. The original reasons for the conflict had been lost to time, replaced by pure, implacable hatred. It was into this grim stalemate that humanity emerged. Earth had developed faster than light travel only 2 centuries earlier, a blink of an eye in galactic terms. Their first encounters with alien life had been cautious, diplomatic. They discovered a universe teeming with life, but also one scared by an incomprehensible conflict. The galactic powers paid humanity little attention. The humans were confined to a mere 27 star systems, their technology primitive by comparison, their military forces negligible. They were categorized as a developing species, one to be monitored but not engaged with. That changed when Ambassador Elena Chen addressed the Galactic Conclave, the loose association of neutral powers that struggled to maintain some semblance of order in a galaxy torn by war. Earth has reviewed the historical records of this conflict, she stated, her voice steady despite the towering alien forms that surrounded her. We have analyzed the strategic patterns, resource allocation, and casualty reports. We believe we can end this war. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Not all species expressed amusement the same way, but the sentiment was universal. The arrogance of this young species was almost endearing. "Ambassador," the Xanthi mediator responded, his translucent tentacles rippling with polite condescension. "This war has persisted for 8 millennia. It has consumed the resources of 1,000 worlds. The greatest minds of 100 species have failed to resolve it. What could Earth possibly offer?" Elena smiled. A different perspective. 3 days later, a small fleet of Earth vessels, just 7 ships, departed for the Carina Nebula, where the latest and largest battle of the Eternal War was raging. The conclave observers watched with a mixture of pity and curiosity. Most expected the humans to be obliterated the moment they entered the conflict zone. What happened instead would change the course of galactic history forever. The human ships arrived at the edge of the Carina system, where thousands of Viridian and Araxian vessels clashed in a spectacular display of destruction. Planet-killer weapons flashed across the void. Artificial singularities devoured entire battle groups. Biological monstrosities the size of small moons grappled with mechanical constructs that defied comprehension. The human fleet, microscopic in comparison, went unnoticed at first. When they were finally detected, both sides dismissed them as irrelevant observers. Then, the impossible happened. The weapons stopped working. All of them. Everywhere. Massive Araxian dreadnoughts found their weapon systems offline. Their shields collapsed, their navigation systems frozen. Viridian leviathans, creatures bred for war over thousands of generations, suddenly lost cohesion, their coordinated attacks dissolving into confusion. Across the battlefield, every ship, every weapon, every piece of advanced technology simply stopped. In the stunned silence that followed, a single transmission was broadcast on all frequencies, in all languages. "This is Captain Mira Santos of the Earth Alliance. Your weapons have been temporarily disabled. We invite representatives of both the Viridian Collective and the Araxian Dominion to join us aboard our flagship for peace negotiations. You have 1 hour to comply." The transmission ended without elaboration or threat. It didn't need any. In the command nexus of the primary Araxian battleship, Supreme Commander Therix experienced something his kind had not felt in millennia. Confusion. Analysis, he demanded of his subordinates. "Unknown technology," came the reply. "Our systems are inert. Not damaged, not destroyed. Simply inactive." Among the Viridian fleet, Hierarch Zillion faced a more existential crisis. The collective consciousness that guided their forces had been muted somehow. Each vessel and creature remained connected to the hive, but the perfect synchronicity, the thing that made them what they were, had been disrupted with surgical precision. "How?" he asked, the question echoing through the fragmented neural network. How could they do this? No answer came. For the first time in recorded history, the Viridian Collective did not know. Aboard the Earth Alliance flagship Prometheus, Captain Santos waited calmly on the bridge, watching the silent battlefield on the main view screen. Her first officer, Commander Bakari, stood at her side, tension evident in his posture. "They'll attack us," Bakari muttered. "They'll find a way." Santos shook her head. "They can't. And that's the one thing neither of them has experienced in 8,000 years. The inability to fight. They don't know what to do except comply. And if they decide to sacrifice the ships here and bring in others from outside the system, then they'll discover that what we've done isn't limited to this battlefield." Santos turned away from the screen. "Prepare the conference room. Our guests will be arriving shortly." 57 minutes later, representatives from both sides arrived on the Prometheus. The Viridian delegation was led by Hierarch Zillion himself, his bioorganic form pulsing with barely contained rage. The Araxian contingent was headed by Supreme Commander Therix, his crystalline body glittering coldly under the conference room lights. Captain Santos entered last, a small human woman facing the leaders of civilizations that had waged war since before her species had learned to write. "Thank you for joining me," she said simply, taking her seat at the head of the table. "We did not come here to negotiate," Therix stated, his voice a harmonious blend of tones that nonetheless conveyed menace. "We came to demand the restoration of our systems and your immediate surrender for this act of aggression." "The collective concurs," Zillion added, the voice emerging from his form like a chorus of thousands speaking as one. "Your interference in matters beyond your understanding will not be tolerated." Santos nodded as if she had expected nothing less. "Before we continue, I want to be sure you understand your situation. What we've done is not a temporary measure, nor is it limited to this battle. As we speak, every weapon system, every military vessel, every piece of war-making technology controlled by either of your civilizations has been neutralized." She tapped a control on the table, and a holographic display appeared above them, showing scenes from across the galaxy. Massive shipyards, orbital weapons platforms, planetary defense systems, all dark, all still. "This is impossible," Zillion whispered. 8 hours ago, I would have agreed with you," Santos replied. "But here we are." The new Galactic Order. The conference room aboard the Prometheus had become unnaturally still. Supreme Commander Therix's crystalline form had ceased its usual subtle movements, frozen in what humans might interpret as shock. Hierarch Zillion's bioorganic body pulsed with irregular patterns, the equivalent of a racing heart in a species that had evolved beyond such simple organs. "You expect us to believe," Therix finally spoke, each word precisely formed, "that a species barely 2 centuries into interstellar travel has somehow neutralized technology that has been perfected over thousands of years." Captain Santos smiled. It wasn't a smile of triumph or mockery, but one of genuine understanding. "No, Commander. I expect you to recognize the evidence before you." She gestured to the holographic displays still showing dead warships and silent weapon platforms across dozens of systems. "We haven't destroyed your technology. We've simply changed how it interacts with reality." "Impossible," Zillion's chorus voice insisted, but with less conviction than before. 8,000 years, Santos said quietly. 8,000 years of war, and neither of you ever stopped to consider why your weapons kept working. Why the fundamental laws of physics continued to allow you to tear the galaxy apart. Both alien leaders remained silent, and Santos continued. "You see, while your civilizations were busy perfecting ways to destroy each other, humanity was obsessed with understanding the universe itself. When we developed faster-than-light travel, it wasn't through brute force or biological manipulation. We discovered something more fundamental, the language of reality." She tapped another control, and a new image appeared, a complex mathematical formula that shifted and changed, symbols that seemed to move in impossible ways. "We call it the fundamental concordance," she explained. "It's not technology in the way you understand it. It's a framework for communicating with the universe itself." Therix's form flickered with electric blue pulses, the Araxian equivalent of a dismissive laugh. "You expect us to believe you can talk to reality. No more or less believable than a species that can grow living starships or transfer consciousness into crystalline matrices," Santos countered. "The point is, we've introduced a simple patch to the underlying code of the physical laws in this sector of the galaxy. Your weapons violate that patch, so they don't work anymore." She leaned forward. "And before you consider alternatives, biological attacks, kinetic weapons, or simply ramming your ships into each other, those violate the patch too. The universe simply won't allow them to function as weapons of mass destruction." "For how long?" Hierarch Zillion asked, the chorus of his voice subdued. "That depends on you," Santos replied. "We're prepared to maintain this state indefinitely, but we'd prefer not to. We'd prefer to help you build something better." The negotiations that followed lasted 3 days. 3 days in which the leaders of civilizations that had known nothing but war for 8 millennia were forced to contemplate peace not as a choice, but as the only option available to them. On the 4th day, the Treaty of Prometheus was signed. It wasn't just a cessation of hostilities. It was a complete restructuring of how both civilizations would interact with the galaxy and each other. The news spread quickly. Across thousands of worlds, beings who had known nothing but war suddenly found themselves facing the prospect of peace. Some celebrated, some mourned, most simply couldn't comprehend what it meant. On Earth, the response was more measured. The public had been informed only after the fact, when success was assured. The revelation that humanity possessed the ability to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics within limited parameters sparked intense debate about responsibility, ethics, and the future of human civilization. 6 months after the Treaty of Prometheus, representatives from every spacefaring species gathered on the neutral world of Harmonium for the first Galactic Concord. Ambassador Chen, now elevated to Earth's High Representative, addressed the assembly. "We understand your concerns," she began, acknowledging the unspoken tension in the room. "Humanity has revealed capabilities that many find disturbing. Some of you fear us. Others resent us. This is natural." She paused, allowing her words to be translated for the diverse gathering. "But I ask you to consider this. We could have remained hidden. We could have allowed the war to continue until it eventually consumed your worlds too. Instead, we chose to act." A representative from the Caldari Federation, one of the oldest neutral powers, rose to speak. "High Representative, while we appreciate the end of the conflict, your species has effectively demonstrated the ability to neutralize all advanced technology within vast regions of space. How can we be assured this power won't be used against us?" Chen nodded. "A fair question. The answer is simple. The fundamental concordance works because it aligns with the natural state of the universe. Peace, cooperation, balance. These aren't just ideals. They're woven into the fabric of reality itself. War, destruction, domination. These things require effort. They require forcing the universe to act against its nature." She gestured to the human delegation beside her. "We didn't create this power. We discovered it, and we've chosen to use it as cosmic gardeners, pruning where necessary to allow life to flourish. And if we disagree with your gardening methods," the Caldari representative pressed, "then we invite you to learn the concordance yourselves." Chen replied simply, "It's not a secret we intend to keep. It's a responsibility we invite you to share." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, expressions, and electromagnetic communications. The idea that humans would willingly share such power was perhaps more shocking than the power itself. Over the following years, a new galactic order emerged. The Viridian Collective and the Araxian Dominion, freed from their eternal conflict, began the long process of rebuilding and rediscovery. Species that had hidden in the shadows for millennia ventured back into the light. Worlds that had been devastated by war slowly healed. Humanity established academies across their territory, where representatives from any species could learn the principles of the fundamental concordance. Not all could master it. It required a certain cognitive flexibility, a willingness to see reality not as fixed, but as a conversation between observer and observed. A decade after the Treaty of Prometheus, Heinrich Zillion, now Chancellor Zillion of the Viridian Commonwealth, visited Earth for the first time. The being who had once commanded the destruction of entire star systems stood in a simple garden in Kyoto, watching cherry blossoms fall. "I still don't understand," he admitted to his human guide, a professor of concordance studies named Maya Patel. "How did your species discover what had eluded us for so long?" Patel smiled. "Perhaps because we were looking for something different. The Viridians sought perfect unity. The Araxians perfect logic. Both admirable goals, but incomplete." "And humans?" Zillion asked. "We sought connection," she replied. "Not just with each other, but with everything around us. Our history is full of people trying to understand the universe, not just control it." She picked up a fallen blossom. "The concordance isn't about power. It's about harmony. About recognizing that you're part of something greater, and that your actions matter not because they can destroy, but because they can create." Zillion was silent for a moment, the chorus of his voice still. Then, almost hesitantly, could my people learn this perspective? Of course, Paddle said, offering the blossom. That's the whole point. Far across the galaxy, aboard a research station orbiting a neutron star, Supreme Commander, now Director, Theric supervised a joint Araxian-human project studying the star's unique properties. His crystalline form had been modified, softened somewhat, allowing for more nuanced communication with his human colleagues. Remarkable readings, noted Dr. Quan, his primary research partner. The star's magnetic field is creating patterns I've never seen before. Patterns that violate 3 of our fundamental laws of physics, Theric observed. Or rather, what we thought were fundamental laws. Quan smiled. The universe keeps surprising us. That is, the most valuable lesson your species has taught mine, Theric admitted. That certainty is an illusion, that there is always more to learn. The human nodded. And yet some things remain constant. The desire to understand, the capacity for growth, the possibility of peace. Together, they watched the neutron star pulse with ancient light, its rhythms a reminder that the universe had existed long before their civilizations and would continue long after. But for now, in this moment, former enemies worked side by side, united in curiosity about the cosmos they shared. And throughout the galaxy, the silent solution continued its work, not through force or constraint, but through the simple, profound recognition that the natural state of the universe wasn't conflict, but connection. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had simply reminded it of what it was meant to be.